Hi folks, I hope this video finds you well. This video is going to be important as we're moving through creating our audience analysis papers that we'll be turning in on Tuesday, and ultimately this is just going to be a good video to kind of help you establish a good framework and a mindset for working through your proposal. And so we're going to be talking about counterarguments, how counterarguments relates to your audience, and how it can be used as a way to heighten your credibility as a writer, especially in the proposal genre. So be sure to stay tuned. There's going to be some good questions at the end of this video I'm asking you to engage with. So please take a look at that. And this will be the first of two videos for this week as we work on our audience analysis and work towards a rough draft of our proposals. Okay, so before I get into the PowerPoint and the slides itself, I just want to take us to the assignment sheet real quick and note a couple changes with things. So, first off, the paper is going to be now due on Thursday the 30th. It was due on Tuesday, but we're just pushing it back a day. So just note that change. I'll be sending an email out with that information as well, with a little more in depth, but I just want to get everyone on the same page, at least thinking about that as far as timeline goes. But what I want to focus on the most here is to show how audience and counterargument are a good thing to think about together. So right off the bat, in our development for audience section, we know that we need to include a counterargument as they're appropriate for the problem and the stakeholder. So keep that in mind, counterarguments and audience. And also keep in mind that we might need to put those counterarguments under specific genre conventions and section headings. So you'll notice in some of those student examples how there's potential objections, counterargument sections. That's a really good way of going about addressing a counterargument, as you'll see in your examples. And this is just a note too. Those examples are successful examples, so feel free to use those in terms of structure to inspire you on how to organize your proposals. Obviously, they look and feel a lot differently than research papers, so feel free to use those example proposals as structural ideas or templates for your own. Obviously, the content is going to be different. Cool. So we're thinking about audience and genre conventions wrapped up with counterarguments as a vital component for a proposal. All right, let's go back to the slide. So starting out, we're going to start out real broad and work kind of and start to chisel away at some of these ideas. So what is a counterargument? Broadly, it's a view that is in opposition or different from your claim. So we're going to kind of keep this thinking from A2 that doesn't have to be necessarily something completely on the other side of the spectrum. If you're arguing for no ocean pollution, you're not really going to find an argument that's saying that ocean pollution, should be happening. We should be polluting the ocean kind of thing too. So sometimes you're not going to find the complete opposite, but just those different perspectives. And for a proposal, I like to think really about it as like a potential objections. Things that your audience will bring up, things that you expect them to object to. You can think about this in terms of costs, in terms of how long this is going to take, in terms of how many people are going to be needed to hire to complete this work, who's going to be involved, objections. Think about if you propose something, how many business people or investors would really want to make sure that, all their grounds are covered, all the corners are covered, everything's working out. So you're going to be experiencing a lot of potential objections in the rhetorical situation of a proposal. So thinking about counterargument in terms of objections and anticipating these objections and responding to them and really having a solid footing on your issue and what it is that you want to propose is going to really make yourself a credible force in getting this proposal accepted and its persuasive power. So like I said, counterarguments and ethos are very much intertwined. They can strengthen ethos by showing your audience that you have anticipated your objections. So what I mean by that is, we include a component of our proposals that shows how we work through these potential counterarguments. That's essentially what we're going to be doing. We're showing our audience how we have anticipated their objections. We really, really need to show our audience that, okay, I know you're going to question me about how much this is going to cost. Therefore, I'm going to include this section where I show you that I've worked through the costs in my head, and I'm showing you that I've done the research to show that I'm working through those. So it really requires you to imagine what audience members are valuing. You know, what are they caring about? What are they most worried about? What are they going to be most worried about? You know, who are you proposing to? Are they going to be worried about internet connection? Are they going to be worried about how many people they're actually reaching if you're increasing awareness? You know, if you're doing a time slot on a news show, you know, what do you have to worry about there? And it also allows you how your reasons and evidence hold up against your counter argument. So when you engage in different perspectives, you know, and if you engage in someone that's going to object to the cost of something, that really helps you solidify what your plan of action is. So, you know, you engage with that different side and you're like, oh, I see my own weaknesses in this argument, therefore I need to go strengthen my own points in my proposal to make it more effective. And something a lot of us will be thinking about is thinking about costs. You know, a big objection to a lot of our counter arguments are going to be costs, and this could be monetary, but it doesn't always have to involve money. You know, sometimes the costs of the plan will be measured in effort or time or, you know, human power, labor. You can also really treat costs as a part to address that counter argument too. That's totally a component. It's a different perspective. It's a potential objection. And like you read in that PDF, you know, you really have to show how you're working through the costs, how you're working through the objections, you know, state what the objection is, show how you're working through it. Be blunt about it, you know. Oh, sorry. So overall, a good mindset to get into when you're writing a proposal, like the pair of glasses you want to put on for it, is you really want to be anticipating counter arguments and objections to whatever it is that you're proposing at each turn and each decision that you make when you're writing and when you're revising. So once you start to formulate a really solid conception of your audience as you're working towards that audience analysis, and once you actually start to write to implement your proposed idea, you really want to be thinking, you know, what are the potential objections or opposing claims my audience might have when they hear my argument, you know? And then once you think through that, you know, once you really have a solid understanding of a list of objections, of main objections that you know your audience is going to come up with, you know, how do you respond to them? How do your reasons and evidence combat these? You know, how is your proposal overcoming these? It's anticipating these, it's accepting these, it's absorbing these. How is it moving past them? So once we kind of engage with counter arguments, then there's a couple different ways to respond to one. You can refute, you can concede, or you can ignore. So refute would be to directly challenge it, be like, you know, yeah, they're stating this, but they left out this component, you know, therefore it's not going to cost as much. And there you're kind of directly engaging with this argumentative battle, so to speak. That depends on really, you know, what the counter argument is and obviously on your specific writing style. So keep that in mind too. But what we'll often find ourselves doing is conceding, you know. So you admitting that the counter argument is valid, you know, that is a really good potential objection you raised up, you know, but here's why we're going to move past it, and here's how we're going to move past it, and here how we're kind of going to adapt to this situation and move on a little further. Or you can ignore it. You know, if you just choose not to respond, and then if that's the case, you probably don't want to bring up that counter argument in there anyway, because it doesn't seem very applicable to the your purpose of your proposal. But concede is definitely one where we'll find ourselves in the most often. Okay, so where might these counter arguments happen? So we've read a couple examples of proposals. We've read a couple student examples. I don't think we've read this air quality one, but it's on Canvas, and I'll be posting it in the email and the discussion posts I sent out to definitely take a look at this one. But I want to take a look at them here, showing where the counter arguments happen and how these authors respond and include these counter arguments in their papers. So I'm going to hop over to those real quick and we'll take a peek at them. Okay, so here we are on the proposals for skate parks under bridges written by Dan Hughes. We've all read this, and if you haven't, I definitely suggest taking a peek at it, looking at it in terms of structure and what it looks like and what each section and section heading is doing. But what I want to look at here is this potential objections and responses section. So a lot of what Hughes does here is really effective. The potential objections are written in italics and are bolded, and the responses are written in normal non-bolded or non-italicized font. This is a really good model to follow in terms of overcoming those potential objections. Something I will say is you might be able to include some more research in here to show, what the actual material benefits are. Something that I'll say he does really well is that he refutes and kind of works with this idea right here. A park that attracts people from surrounding cities doesn't serve Seattle. That's a potential objection. But the refute comes right here. In fact, it does. And then so we're engaging with this, working past that. Sorry about that. Need to update something on my computer. Also something that is good to note is how this kind of concede works here. So lights are expensive. Right there, Hughes admits, yeah, lights are expensive. That's a great objection. Totally acknowledging that this is a true fact. But if we notice, lights need not to stay on all night. If they can be used as a tennis court, they can be used the same way for a skate park. They can shut off automatically to help offset the cost. Engaging with these potential objections and showing how we can work past them based on other scenarios and possibilities. And then we get in here too for the needed resources. This engages, what actually needs to happen. What human power and what costs need to go into making this happen. So these are two really good examples of showing, what do we actually need for this to happen and what could be some objections for this. I strongly recommend including components that are this blunt in your paper, showing what the objections are, how you're working past them, what are the resources for those, what are the costs, and then what are the benefits of using those costs. So kind of wrapping up this discussion on counter arguments and addressing the costs and benefits, I'm going to be posting these questions on the discussion post, but ideally by Thursday, I want you to kind of engage with these ideas of counter arguments and potential objections. If you want to include some components in your audience analysis, that's great. I'll definitely be writing up some responses to those audience analysis, but definitely take a peek at these questions. These are what you need to be kind of answering to kind of get into this counter argument anticipatory mindset. How are you going to really create a strong proposal? You got to really work through those counter arguments and you got to anticipate those objections that your stakeholder is going to make. All right, if you have any questions, let me know, and I'm excited to keep talking about this.